Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tank. My name is Alan. When I first saw Jacen Syndulla in the Rebel series, it was a joyous and bittersweet moment. It was nice knowing that Kanan had left something behind for Hera. I also thought, how does green skin turn into green hair? And when I saw live action Jacen, he kind of reminded me of a young Joker or something. I think they should have just given him green skin without the head tentacles. But then again, I'm not an expert on Twilight human reproductive traits. But it is very clear to me that young Jacen takes after his father quite a lot. He's fascinated about the Jedi.
Is it true Aunt Sabina's gonna be a Jedi?
Now, where did you hear that?
Chopper told me.
I think Jacen knows a lot about his father. Jacen Syndulla seems like the type of mother who would not hold back any secrets. She's not someone who runs away from her past. As difficult as Kanan's death was probably for her, as the daughter of a revolutionary and a leader in the Rebel Alliance, she was used to loss and also understood the importance of keeping the memory of those who have passed alive. It's a pilot thing, recognizing the sacrifice of others, and it's also now a maternal thing. Because Jacen Syndulla cherished and loved Kanan Jarrus with the deepest passion and care. She was always an extremely loving and nurturing person. It's just her nature. I mean, if you take a look at her Spectre unit, it wasn't really a military operation or a special forces unit. She ran it like she would run a family. I think this was Hera's own reaction to her father, who was forced time and time again to take up arms and defend his people. Cham was a good father to Hera most of the time, but he was also ruthless in how he executed his war. And oftentimes he was more than willing to sacrifice his own people to get results. And I think Jacen Syndulla witnessed this from a young age. It probably traumatized her a little bit, and I think she took a very different approach to leadership as a result, a more costly one because she does care so much about everyone beneath her command. While the Spectre unit fit into the larger command chain of Phoenix Squadron, they were given a long leash and more or less allowed to choose whatever missions they wanted to choose. And so Hera, instead of making each member of her group interchangeable, Hera went with the odd choice of making every member of her unit irreplaceable. Instead of asking everyone else to adjust to the unit, she found out the individual weaknesses and strengths of her people and took advantage of their connections and skills. And so most of the missions that the Spectres went through were somehow related to at least one member of the team. Sometimes the Spectres would aid Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger in their Jedi shenanigans, or fight against the Inquisitors who were snatching Force-sensitive babies. Sometimes the Spectres would help Sabine Wren and her people, the Mandalorians. Other times the Spectres were helping Hera's people, the Twi'leks, on Ryloth. And if any member of her unit got in trouble or was captured, everyone would drop everything they were doing and go rescue them. Like when Zeb Orrelios got trapped on one of the moons of Geonosis, or when Kanan Jarrus was captured by the Grand Inquisitor, or when Ezra and Sabine get captured by the 5th brother and 7th sister, or when Jacen Syndulla gets shot down and captured by the Empire. It was actually during that last mission that Kanan Jarrus would make that ultimate sacrifice by giving his life so that everyone else could live. But Jacen Syndulla is the one who set that example. I mean, Kanan Jarrus was relatively lost in between Order 66 and the beginning of the rebellion. It was only through Hera that he could kind of find himself and become the Jedi that he always knew he could be. And in the last moments of his life, Kanan Jarrus was so attuned with the Force that he even regained his sight again so that he could lay eyes on his lovely Twilight partner one last time. I'm sure Jacen Syndulla tells Jacen Syndulla the story of his father all the time, and I think it's important for her to keep Kanan's memory alive and just make her son understand how much his father would have loved him, and equally as important, what a great man Kanan was. We all need positive role models in life, and I think it's very hard for Jacen to grow up without a father figure, aside from that sociopathic talking traffic cone. And as a result of all those stories, it's only natural that Jacen would want to be a Jedi as well. I mean, what 8-year-old kid doesn't want a bunch of lightsabers and superpowers? Me, I was that kid. I didn't want lightsabers. I wanted the Millennium Falcon and, hidden compartments for smuggling. Anyway, so Hera is faced with this issue.
I want to be a Jedi.
Yeah, I know you do, Jacen.
I think when little Jacen says this, it brings out a lot of warm emotions in Hera. I think it's really wonderful for her to see her son want to be just like her father, but it's also a really emotional moment, right? I imagine that Hera sees a lot of Kanan in this little guy, and there's probably a strong maternal instinct inside of her that wants to protect Jacen from a similar fate that her father suffered through. being a Jedi is a difficult and dangerous path to take in life. But hold on guys, this is Jacen Syndulla. She was born in the Revolution, became a rebel before she was an adult, and she's been fighting on one front line or another, in one war or another for most of her life. Her tolerance for danger is extremely high, and ideologically speaking, she's all about liberation and freedom. I feel like she'd want her son to pursue his dreams and goals. Plus, being force sensitive and not getting trained in how to wield it just seems like a bad idea. And if you really think about it, Jacen Syndulla already takes Jacen with her on some relatively dangerous missions like this one to Cetos, and she doesn't really think twice about it.
Mom? Can I come out now?
All right. But don't wander off too far. We don't know this planet, so keep Chopper with you.
I mean, she's kind of responsible. She's clearly had this talk with Jacen about how to act in a hostile environment. She's confident in her own abilities and she's willing to do whatever to protect her son. But never does it cross her mind how terrible things could be if she got killed right in front of him. But we really shouldn't judge Hera too much, especially if you take a look at her past experience and what she's been up to for the last 30 years. She's just knows war and only war, so it only makes sense for her to train her offspring to know how to handle himself in that kind of situation. And so I think for Hera, the idea of allowing Jacen to become a Jedi isn't really about safety. It's more about finding the right person to teach him. I'm sure Jacen Syndulla knows Luke Skywalker from the war, but he actually doesn't establish his Jedi Temple until 9 ABY. And as we can see, the only student he has so far was Gogurt, and he doesn't stick around after being forced to choose between Mando Dad and the Order. It's also around 9 ABY in Ahsoka, and I really don't think Jacen Syndulla is in any rush to send Jacen off to Luke Skywalker. Again, it's not just about getting trained, it's about what kind of sacrifices will they have to make as a family to get Jacen trained. I think having Jacen to choose between the Jedi or his family won't really sit well with Jacen Syndulla. She's kind of like the Dominic Toretto of Star Wars.
My home is my crew and family.
That's what made Jacen Syndulla and Kanan Jarrus work in the first place. Kanan never really cared much for Jedi procedure and followed his heart and chose to love. I mean, Luke's Jedi Order really represents the old way, and it's not really compatible with how the galaxy works now. It's no wonder he ultimately ends up failing. And so the appearance of Ezra in the galaxy kind of changes everything, more than Hera realizes. Ezra is closely tied to Kanan Jarrus. Other than Hera, I think he misses Kanan the most. Even though they only knew each other for a few years, Ezra saw Kanan as a father figure and a mentor after losing his own parents at such a young age to the Empire. It was this relationship that he had with Kanan that ultimately forced him to grow up and become more responsible. After Kanan Jarrus lost his sight on Malachor, Ezra Bridger began taking a more active role in leading and planning the Spectre's missions, and after Kanan died on Lothal, it was up to Ezra to take the fight up against the Empire. It was his idea to take out Thrawn with those Purrgil, and by defeating Thrawn, Ezra in a way had finished the job that Kanan had started. And now that Ezra is back in New Republic territory, he's gonna have to reopen some of those wounds all over again. He's gonna have to face the loss of Kanan again, something that he didn't really have to do as much on Peridea. And remember, he's not a Golden Age Jedi. Ezra Bridger is a Boken Jedi. This means he understands the principles of what it means to be a Jedi without all those weird constraints and rules about emotions. And while Ezra never had a chance to stop and grieve when Kanan died initially, being stuck on Peridea with a bunch of crab turtle guys gave him plenty of time to process that loss. But I think seeing Hera again will cause a lot of those emotions and feelings to flood back in. But just like how Jacen has helped keep Kanan alive for Hera, I think Ezra will also find peace and meaning in being able to develop a relationship with his former master's son. And I feel like Ezra will feel a lot of responsibility towards Jacen. He'll probably want to be a mentor, a bigger brother, a father-like figure in his life. When Ezra came to Kanan Jarrus, he knew nothing about the Force, so everything that Ezra knew about the Jedi came from Kanan's own understanding. And Kanan, despite being trained in the Jedi Order beneath Deepa Billaba, who herself was a Padawan of the rigid Mace Windu, didn't prescribe to that Jedi orthodoxy. I mean, the fact that he loved Jacen Syndulla, had this kid, is a great sign that he was more like a normal human being than a Jedi. But also, since he experienced Order 66 from such a young age, he was also forced to forget and hide a lot of things he knew about the Jedi until he was much older. And so Kanan Jarrus' teachings about the Jedi Order to Ezra were much more grounded in reality, grounded in his own experiences, his own struggle to survive in the galaxy. His Jedi training actually deals with problems that most people face. Baylan Skoll can call Ezra a broken Jedi, but I simply see him as being a part of a more realistic school of the Force that is actually designed for the masses, and not just for people who can return every night to an isolated temple in the middle of Coruscant. And so in this way, Ezra is kind of the perfect Jedi Master for someone like Jacen Syndulla, who is a little bit older, who isn't there to get brainwashed from a young age, who's growing up in a society where the Jedi are not really well known anymore because they've most likely all disappeared. And so I think Ezra makes the perfect master for Jacen Syndulla. I think his teachings are better suited for the times that Jacen will live in, where Jedi aren't common, they're not everywhere. I also think that Ezra probably knows Kanan's teachings better than anyone alive, and so having Ezra teach Jacen is almost like having Kanan teach his son. And we've seen that even at the young age of 8, Jacen Syndulla is able to help his mother with his Force abilities, and she also trusts and respects those abilities.
Mom, listen.
I am.
No, listen to the waves.
General?
Okay.
It was Jacen who first sensed that Ahsoka was alive and having that duel in the world between worlds.
What are we listening for?
Don't you hear it?
The waves crashing?
No. The lightsabers.
It's clear that the young man is as talented in the Force as his father was, and given the coming tides of war thanks to Thrawn's reappearance, the New Republic will need as many Force sensitives as they can get their hands on. And those with Force sensitivity were always placed on the battlefield at a young age. Although I think Jacen probably still a bit too young for Hera to allow that to happen. But the question is, can Ezra Bridger actually teach someone? Technically speaking, he's just a Padawan learner himself. The Jedi of old were only allowed to teach once they became a Jedi Knight. Kanan Jarrus would actually have to go through his own initiation to become knighted in the Jedi Temple on Lothal by a ghost of the Jedi Temple Guardian. I think Ezra probably needs his own ceremony as well, but just based on his actions, I think he already deserves to be a Jedi Knight. He's proven himself on many occasions, like that time Emperor Palpatine tried to convince Ezra to help him open a pathway to the world between worlds so that he could have access to it as well.
Ezra! Where is that boy?
You know it is possible to change fate. There are infinite paths and infinite possibilities, but you must open the door.
Yeah, Palpatine dangles Ezra's dead family before him. It's the only thing that Ezra's ever really cared about a lot.
Mom? Dad? You'll always be a part of me.
The young man has a good heart and a good head on his shoulders. He sees right through Palpatine's trap.
I have to let you go.
And shortly after that, Ezra Bridger defeats Thrawn, so I think he's already a Jedi Knight in almost every way. His ceremony is just a bit delayed. And again, I think he'll be a great match for young Jacen Syndulla. They share a lot of similarities. Both needed a father figure when they were young. Both are Force sensitive in a post-Jedi Order world, and both of these individuals share such a close connection to Kanan. And maybe one day Ezra can even pass Kanan Jarrus' lightsaber to his son, and maybe at that point, Ezra can finally let go of whatever guilt or responsibility he feels for Kanan's death. So there you have it, guys. That is my analysis on the situation. What do you guys think about Jacen being taught by Ezra Bridger? Is that a good match, or, I don't know, should Jacen wait for Luke Skywalker's school to grow a little bit more, or should he wait for Ahsoka Tano? Let me know. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.